color thumbnail number 1. So what's gonna happen? Let's say if we go to our gradient map and we immediately go straight over the entire layer like this, it will work, but it will color the whole thing, including the skin and the accent, the yellow accent that we probably want to keep yellow. And that is why we separated the skin and the accent so we can just play around with the costume. And as you can see, immediately it takes from all the different values that we have and it just slaps the colors into them. And this is honestly, it can get a little trippy, but it's such a fun thing to witness. It's really cool. It's really fun. Another thing I want to do is let's just slap a quick color on our skin tone. We haven't really decided on kind of color we want it to be. It's something like this. We still have the yellow accent, which we can absolutely run with, and to just change the accent. And if we do it like this, for example, we got something that's pretty bright, almost like psychedelic, and it's fun in its own right. In fact, let's keep this as an experiment. We probably won't go to something that bright, or we might, you know what we can do is let's start toning down some stuff. The part that to me does not quite work is the pink armor. We can have pink as an accent, I think, but if it's too pink, it just doesn't quite work. So let's lock some of the colors around the pink, but let's change it to something a little bit more boring. Maybe some hint of pink, but more gray. This can work better, I believe, but it's still okay. This is here. I'm moving the gradient map, and this is the sweet spot of that value right there. Position 60. So it's really good to remember the position, because when you were working on the values, or at least when I work on my values, I don't pay close attention to what position the grayscale is at. I should have, because it's gonna make my life so much easier when we play around with the gradient map. But alas, we didn't do that. So this is too saturated. Let's make that part a little bit more boring. A blue. Yep, pretty nice contrast, I think. Also feels. Oh, when I press space, the color settings pop up. I was wondering. We can, depending on the mixing mode. So standard is Clip Studio's legacy mixing mode, where, well, frankly speaking, it's very digital. The colors don't mix super well. But since Clip Studio 2.0, they release Perceptual, which will mix your colors in a much more natural way. So here you can see the mix between the pink and the light blue, resulting in almost like a purple. But when we go with Perceptual, things will feel a lot more natural. Very pink, very cool. We'll keep it a little subdued. But yeah, enough playing around with that one. I think that's a cool trial. Now let's mess around with a completely different gradient map. So I'd like to start from the bottom. We have this thing called uniform demo. Oh, this is from our mage girl with the uniform. I have a couple other presets here. This is called Kojima 2, Kojima 1, Asia. Actually, I really like, this on its own, this might work just fine. Maybe let's try to adjust darker value. See, like what I said before, we might end up with something pretty boring, but honestly, this feels tactical and it's can be fun. One way to make it pop, of course, is we add a cool accent. Where's my red? I like my red. Look at the yellow neon. So this is at 67, we drag it down to 60. This is around where our value is for the armor again. And for whatever reason, I'm not a big fan of the armor being too saturated. So while the color combination is pretty cool here, I'm just gonna drop down the saturation to more gray. Just feels more natural. And voila, that took, I don't know, 3 minutes, and really bright one. Let's leave it to fate. Let's leave it to the gods of the gradients, the gradient maps that we already have. And as usual, as the rest that we did, we will adjust them as we need. Oh man, this red, this is actually pretty cool. Might be too saturated. I'm not a big fan of the saturation falling on the belts, so let's swap it. Easy peasy. So around 30. So the belt itself is probably around, yeah, probably around 40. And it seems that if my eyes don't fool me, the rest of the outfit, the drape, it should be at around 30 here. With the fine artist, we use a disgustingly bright color. The spot thing is around here. So let's just call it 30. So at 30, between 29 to 30, that's our main color, which I forgot what. Oh, but at least now we know the position. So we're just gonna redo that. So we're at 30 and we're at, I believe, belt is around 35 here. So we got the values of the drapey part of the outfit and the belts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna swap them. So yeah, what I just did, basically I just swapped the colors of the two. Why it's looking a little messed up is because of the line art, the line work. And normally you don't get this kind of saturation or brightness, when it's such a dark value. In our case, we just want to play around. We want to experiment a little bit with the red color thing, just blasting your optical nerves like this. We'll tone it down. But yeah, again, this is the part where I enjoy the most because you get to play around with the values. You already set some values and you just like you messing around with bringing the darker values lighter, making the lighter values darker, and you can do it without ever touching the actual values that you. Excellent. Our armor is at 60. Yes. So this is the one. We can adjust the curve of the mixing, but we're not gonna bother with that right now. We're just gonna lock the sides because I want to make the armor part darker. It's possible. It is a pretty cool read, I would say. I'm not liking this still bringing in the red here, brighter. So we have this pretty interesting combination. There's a lot of saturation going on. Normally, I simply do not go this direction, but we're having a lot of fun here. So let's play around with a couple more before we decide what we're gonna go with. Again, this is super, super easy to do. Really doesn't require a lot of time or energy. Let's not get too picky and let's just slap some. Let's play with the accent there, the yellow, the in blue with the red. And for number 4 down here, it's really nice just stepping back a little bit. I'm pushing my Cintiq a little further away from my eyes right now. I could just like get a feel. Ooh, so this is pretty similar with what we have with Kojima. I think this one is called Sandman and Sandgirl. Sandgirl feels pretty cool. And so we know that those two will work. This is the intense 90s. Yeah, pretty have one bright one. Ooh, I like this. This chromatic radiant map. You know what? Let's lock it down. Hell yeah. And then let's here. And yeah, I'm not zooming in on purpose because I do want to see how it looks from far away, from further away. I do the thing that we do, go to 60 position and perhaps reduce the saturation of the armor bits. So still reduce saturation, but now it's next number 5 here. Let's see. We're gonna pick one from Sandman or Sandgirl, I think, just because it's such a fun color combination. But let's give it for number 6. Let's go through some of the stuff we have ready. And of course, you can create your own gradient maps. You can just like at any point in time when you play around with values on any characters, you can start creating your own gradient maps. Just see what works, what doesn't work. Whatever map doesn't work for this character, for example, can absolutely work for a totally different character. And I really think that is a part of the fun. Venusaur feels pretty cool. Ooh, darker. This is called Bad Ending. Don't ask me why these names are the way they are. Sometimes I just name them based on the vibes I get. So this is called Romania. I might have been thinking about the vampire. Dracula. This our design number 2. Our color number 2 was based in Kojima number 2. So there's a lot of cool options here. Before we pick one, I just want to make sure. Let's just explore. Let's go wild. I'm feeling Romania. So again, mess around with the accent a little bit. Let's bring some either purple or red. I think will work. Red generally always feels a little darker. Red is gonna look like this pretty much. So the values are competing a little bit. So go with something brighter. We can go with neon purple. Is we got a 60-degree for the armor bits. And for the last one, before we move on to the next part where we're gonna start coloring, we're gonna start rendering based on the color combination. Let's pick a nice one for this. I'm trying to look at all 6 color combinations here. So now let's go ahead. I'm just gonna do some rough movement sketch. If we're thinking of short range, it can be as simple as her just swinging that scythe, and we want a scythe to swing this way. So the movement goes like this. And now I'm just really drawing stickman before we draw her actual poses, just because we are now thinking about the movement. We're thinking about the flow first. So we don't need to worry too much about the proportion or the anatomy of it all. So she would spin it, and then what if she would just like slam it on the ground. So right now this is gonna be a high impact moment. So just a slice and then a smash. And these can be pretty simple. We're gonna leave it at that. And now let's get started drawing them. It's really fun coming up with these ideas. I would say this is probably the most fun bit of this exercise, where we come up with the things, we come up with the stuff. All right, so I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. So the most difficult part of this process is to draw these poses convincingly. That's why we touch on fundamentals a little bit. We want to make sure we can quickly draw gestures of our character in various poses, especially in this very dynamic, very speedy movements. So let's just start drawing. I'm just gonna use my easel pen. So it's fine if it's rough. And what's important is getting the silhouette correct. So in this case, I start with the head. I think the horn can be a pretty distinct indicator of this character. And of course, our weapon has a bit of a curve. And one thing we must be flexible with is sometimes we draw things in perspective. And even though it's rough, just make sure it's clear. Make sure the intention is clear. I want to make sure she's facing the front. And now I'm mostly trying to convey movement. So there's a lot of gesture here. And I think we can have some pretty fun movement studies of the other leg, just because we want to show a lot of dynamic movement, adjusting the proportion a little bit. So this is going to be our first pose. And I plan to do it later, but while I do my sketch with line art like this, I like to make sure we block it. Get a leg as well. So just we can get a nice silhouette. So something like that is something I try to do every time we do this. Some people would go with silhouette right away, but personally, I have trouble thinking about my gesture. So I like to always start with my line art. Here, this is the other arm holding the size. I'm just gonna get out. Use a spin all the way. So she's not moving too much. Thing kind of remains in similar position here, mostly moving her body. I feel like this doesn't really feel like a big action. So let's try to adjust that a little bit. The head position can be better. You can't see it on camera, but I'm moving around, making slashing move, just so I can get a feel. So we're just gonna add this leg movement and her thing just billowing in the movement, following the other way around, following her movement. Change the perspective a little bit. So we got the second pose, and from there she will then lift up her scythe. Maybe a little bit too long of a hand here. I'm not happy with the pose of the scythe. And so this arm in front of her face here in this angle, really bring it in front of her here. So the inertia of the previous movement is still here. The direction here towards the front. Exaggerate this leg a little bit more. This leg was previously not on the ground, so now she's gonna switch something like that. And yes, we're gonna make her weapon switch here. what if at this moment of the switch becomes a part of her movement? The lift up says this can be a moment where she jumps. So she takes off here, just goes up. Maybe we'll change this part a little bit as well, so it can feel a bit more natural. No, actually, we're gonna change this thing as the snap happens. What she can do is she can already bring the weapon above her head. So something like this, maybe taller. So she already leap, little jump movement here, and then she smashes. You can see all just little thumbnails, really quick gesture drawings here. Maybe not to changing the read and the direction a little bit, or a little more exaggerated pose here. Where let's find a nice balance here. A little bit of trouble with the proportion as usual. Make sure the size of everything is good. Let's see. I think we can make the size a little bigger here, a little longer, exaggerating a little bit. Let's drop some blockouts. Forgot the skirt on the last pose, so let's just add it first. So now we have this. I'm gonna hide the side. I think we need a little bit more space. I just combined the line art and the block out, and now we got some of the base poses, some of the base sketches here. So now the fun part, I'm gonna walk you through creating VFX. So the rest of the poses, again, I'm gonna do in a time lapse, but for this we have about 10 minutes left in this lesson, so let's create some VFX work. So the way I like to do it is I do not draw my movements, I do not draw my VFX, I only use my lasso feel. So this is how I draw everything, you can see, and I will go to here. So in Clip Studio, there's this thing called border effect, and then I can choose a color. In this case, I'll choose a dark brown. Immediately you get line art on your VFX. So whatever you draw in whatever color, now we'll have this dark brown outline. So really handy tool. I'll show you more how we can use it, but for now, let's get started on the movement. So definitely this is the basic slice right here, but what we want to get is something that feels wider, something like that. Basic movement. Wait, why did I use green? I didn't want green. I want something a little bit yellow. But yeah, as you can see, you can change the color and everything, and the line work will not be changed at all, which is great. Reduce some of that and just small. So as she snaps, it has this energy. Feel this movement here. Things okay. Comes from the ground, and then a huge swing. Something big. Adjust the shape. And for the sake of clarity, actually, let's change this effect into something a little bit more readable against the white. This thing for now. Let's use red. I like our reds. Orange is good. But this reads super well, super bright. And we can refine more, but I'm gonna create a new layer just to show that we are adding, we can't forget the impact on the ground. And the very last thing I like to do, we got all the rough movements. I think she's feeling pretty good. The last thing I like to do is just add some flair to our VFX. So I like to add brighter, it's like a flame, brighter energy, something simple. And I like to make sure the edges also read a little darker, just so we get better clarity. And with the ground, just gonna lock the transparency here and just this flare. We're giving it a little bit more form and also just generally make it more readable.